at the workstation every time. So every workstation has a quality officer who would, on the Kanban card, say the same and sign off the quality inspection. And every Kanban card could be an activity, like installing the wheels or setting the windshield in the front, or the very big one, merging the motor with the chassis. In popular terms, Volkswagen introduced a term that's called a marriage, where for the first time all parts together become a car. This is heavily used both in Agile and in DevOps. Basically, the Kanban board is a modern translation to the same concept. And one way to use this well is to actually make this innate. And what people usually do when they use Kanban board, that this is things to do. This is your product backlog items, your work items waiting to be done. This is development, and this is testing. But that's actually wrong. This should be something that is done by whoever is qualified to judge the quality, but this is also how did we do it and could we do it better. So I think in Lean it's called Muga, what kind of waste can you identify, and how can you avoid having that waste and make it run more smooth or better? So what can you improve? This is not a quality check, it's an improvement point. I think not a lot of people are using it that way, and done is basically done. And there's a lot of debate. I'm going to go into Scrum where done means that you are done with development, and in DevOps, done means it's in production. But there's a lot of debate in the field and in practice on how to do this. Measurements. That is metrics was part of the title, right? Basically, metrics is measurement. Monitoring is measurement. Anything that helps you improve or work better. And sharing means that no longer we have separate departments, we have one. The end goal is not to deliver your work, the end goal is to deliver value by delivering a product. So the question is, does that change testing? So again, a short assignment. And what I would like you to do is use the same groups or mingle a little bit more and write down as a group on the flip chart. You have rolls of paper you can use. How you think this changes testing. You gave a description of testing that was very pleasant. I gave some hints already. So let's just see what you make of what I've told so far and what you know about testing compared to what you're used to. 15 minutes, let's say 20 past 10. Now I'm going to check which one I am. And you're still allowed to ask questions. You interrupt me. They're both based on delivering value. Agile was never intended as such. Agile was basically rewriting the process. While DevOps is more aligned with the lean concept, so value streams. That is the main difference. Well, agile is actually container.
How do you test in DevOps? Test in DevOps.
And what they did is they fed out with the idea that people are calling it incremental or iterative, whatever the kind of development, but and they want to have return.
So yang kalau dia start dengan testing, so dia panggil test driven so to come up dengan testing method, come up dengan test case. So basically that activity is led by test.
It seems you're the victim.
Yeah. So doing.
Yeah, let's stand up.
So this is our interpretation of DevOps. So usually we start with planning. Then after we have a plan, we will refine the requirement. So this is where the testing goes in DevOps. This is actually requirement gathering. So we verify the requirement, we prioritize it. After that, the selected requirement will go through to the developer and analysis and design team. And testing and analysis and design team. Am I correct?
Yes.
So these two teams are working in parallel. So here is where we develop module, and afterward all that maybe a few modules will be combined, and we will go through coding and testing one more time here. And afterward we will go into live operation. So later on, this is a continuous process. And at the same time, we are going to do monitoring and feedback.
if I can step in and take oh, let's. I have a red one, but I don't want that back to use it. This I'd say sort of okay. Kind of happens. This I'd say. I have a question. Who does this? Who does the prioritization? Requirements. The product owner. And I'll get into what a product owner is later on. This I'd say get rid of these lines. And this was an analysis and design?
Yes.
This box needs to be here. Even worse, this needs to be here. So the way you test in DevOps is everybody tests all the time. That's not quite the complete answer on how do you test, but we'll get there. I have seen the other things. So your in activity you might not be wrong, but in sequence and distinction of activities, that actually doesn't exist in DevOps anymore. Very difficult for people. There was another question. What about typically in DevOps? What happens is what is your role currently? Tester. Sorry, you're a software engineer. What is your role? Huh? Yes. Thank you very much. You're a software engineer. One of you a business analyst? Thank you very much. You're a software engineer. So basically, there's only one role. And software engineer is a term that is used. Unfortunately, it's also a term that kind of invites people to think that they are developers. Especially managers love to think that that means that they are developers, which is often a reason to fire everybody else. Unfortunately, what they mean with software engineer is somebody who engineers software and not literally only codes or builds. I think this one a little bit goes a little bit deeper in the how. Well, you test continuously. Kind of a giveaway, I gave it one. You automate, you do fast delivery continuously. Manually, you're not able to keep up. So you need. And if I talk to them, sometimes they have no idea what I mean if I say test environment. There is only one environment. That is the environment you develop stuff in. And from there it goes into production. Personally, I think having only one environment between you and production, tricky. I would love to have at least some sort of an acceptance environment in which you can. Very tricky to do acceptance testing on and to validate stuff. So, but I find it interesting that most of those small companies don't call this a test environment anymore. Because the whole concept of test has changed for them. And you have hung up at the latest moment. And I'm going to make him crazy. I like it. Totally true. Well, good. A tester team. Developers. Yeah, well, actually, a test team doesn't exist anymore. Since we're all, if we're all software engineers, doesn't mean that we don't specialize. Because what I hate most is the assumption that if you are all software engineers, you should all be what they call T-shaped or M-shaped or whatever shape, that you should be able to do everything. T-shaped is the most popular one if you are reorganizing your department, because my specialty is test, and I should expand my specialty by being able to do business analysis and development and whatever, and architecture. And M-shape is that I actually specialize a little bit in those as well. It's all very nice, but for me, what I like is that you go away from the concept of the individual and go to the concept of team. A team delivers something, so the team needs to have the skill set. So a team for me should be able to handle requirements, should be able to code, should be able to automate, should be able to deploy, and should be able to test. And I don't care who does it, but I do care the skill level. And in practice that means that, especially for testing, testing has a mindset and a skill level that is not natural for a lot of other software people. So there still is a need for software testers. The only thing is that while your specialty may be software testing, you should also be able to deploy to production. You should also be able to read code. You should also be able to understand architecture. And if you are in a reorganization process, nothing of that comes immediate. I think one of you asked how long does it take? Typically I would say after a year everybody should understand the process. After 2 years most of you will be able to do the process, and after 4 years you will be good at it. That is not what companies want to hear. Most companies want to hear half year, and then you're done. But that is just not the reality. Unless you're a startup. But startups have their own problems. That's it. And then I'll go to the last one because they talk true. I like especially this edition. One of the things that you want to achieve with DevOps is not to test at the end. Testing continuously means you test always and everything. So ideas can also be verified or validated. Solutions, or rather ideas on solutions, can also be validated. So, yes, verification review. Yeah, I say yes. I don't have a lot to say with this. I'll get to this one a little bit later. Test-driven development, TDD. That originates from XP, Extreme Programming. Ken Beck were the first to do that. The trouble I have with that is that if you look from a testing perspective, it says test-driven development. That the emphasis for a lot of people is on test for some reason, while if you look at your origin and the purpose of TDD, it is development. So it is a coding activity. But it's very, very useful in DevOps. And where the collaboration part should be is you do this by writing a unit test first, and that fails because the code doesn't exist. Then you start writing code to make the test pass, which is an indication that if that particular unit test passes, that some part of the functionality you have realized in code. Typically, if you are a lazy programmer, you do one unit test per piece of code, per function or method or procedure. I'd say, well, step up a little bit and make it 3 to 4. But a lot of, I'm just now referring to programmers, I'm not calling them developers anymore. A lot of programmers don't like that because it takes a lot of time. But typically it improves code quality. And a unit test is also a form of documentation as well. Because hidden away in a unit test is also an understanding of the requirements. BDD, behavior-driven development, steps up from that. Because basically what this does is not programming on a unit level, but programming at the solution level. So you might do TDD to achieve BDD, but the main purpose actually here is the behavior part. What you do is you write down the behavior of the program. What should it do? Not, this is more the technical side. How do you check that the code does the function that it's supposed to be doing? Here you go into how do I check that the behavior I intended the program to do actually is done. So this is actually requirements engineering. And what its main purpose is to have a collaboration between the stakeholders, people who want something to be achieved in code, and they express that in a way so that a developer can implement that. So, given I have a user, when he enters the login details, then he is logged in. The very simplest one. Every school book starts with something like that. That is behavior. That is what, as a user, if I log in, I want to be logged in. That is very simple, very straightforward, and you implement that in code. That there is a whole web page behind it, there's a database behind it, there's security behind it, there's maybe a rule on what the password should be behind it. That is all implicit. So this is, and you can go and see if you can implement that, how you implement it. What it often is misused for, including what I'm doing currently in the testing framework that we're working on, is that you use the fact that you can do a given when then as a test condition. So you start implementing this not by implementing the code, but by setting up Selenium with something called Cucumber. And in Cucumber you can use the given when then, because Cucumber is the methodology that uses Gherkin, which is actually the official name of the given when then language. And you can implement that. So it runs the test rather than the verification of the requirements. So a lot of people use that as a testing framework, basically. I know 3 of the 4 people who are the force behind BDD. One of them is Liz Kioch, and I talked about her that I was doing that, and she almost, I think she wanted to roast me